Narcissistic leaders in history, a comparative analysis. Throughout history, leaders have shaped civilizations, waged wars, and changed the course of humanity. But what happens when these leaders are driven by narcissism? Today, we're diving into the minds of some of history's most infamous figures to explore the traits, motivations, and consequences of narcissistic leadership. Defining narcissistic leadership. First, let's define narcissism in leadership. In psychology, narcissism isn't just about arrogance. It's a personality trait with distinct characteristics. Grandiosity, an inflated sense of self-importance, often accompanied by fantasies of unlimited success, power, or brilliance. Need for admiration, a relentless craving for praise, validation, and recognition from others. Lack of empathy, difficulty understanding or caring about others' emotions, leading to a disregard for their well-being. Entitlement, a belief that they deserve special treatment, obedience, and unwavering loyalty. Not all narcissism is destructive, though. There's a difference between healthy and unhealthy narcissism. Healthy narcissism in leadership, confidence and resilience in decision-making, a strong vision that inspires and mobilizes people, the ability to take criticism and adapt. Think of leaders like Franklin D. Roosevelt or Theodore Roosevelt. Both had strong egos but used them to benefit their nations. Unhealthy narcissism in leadership, paranoia and the need to eliminate threats, real or imagined. Manipulative behavior, including propaganda and deception. Authoritarian tendencies, disregarding laws, morals, or ethics. Figures like Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Hitler fall into this category. Leaders who place their own power above the well-being of their people. The narcissistic leadership spectrum. Charismatic and persuasive, Julius Caesar. Domineering and controlling, Napoleon Bonaparte. Manipulative and exploitative, Adolf Hitler. As we explore historical examples, you'll see how narcissism shaped their leadership styles and ultimately determined their rise and fall. Narcissistic leaders throughout history. Many leaders throughout history have exhibited strong narcissistic traits. But today we'll focus on three figures who left a lasting impact on the world: Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, and Adolf Hitler. Julius Caesar. Grandiosity. Declared himself dictator for life. Manipulation, used political alliances and public support to consolidate power. Legacy, assassinated, leading to the fall of the Roman Republic. Caesar's ambition and charisma made him a beloved leader, but his unchecked power led to his downfall. Genghis Khan, brutality and control, conquered vast territories with ruthless efficiency. Loyalty cultivation, rewarded followers generously but showed no mercy to enemies. Legacy, built the largest contiguous empire in history. Genghis Khan was feared and respected. His leadership was ruthless, but his military genius reshaped Asia and beyond. Adolf Hitler, propaganda and manipulation, exploited economic hardships to gain power. Lack of empathy led to the Holocaust and World War II. Downfall. His unchecked narcissism led to his own destruction. Hitler's obsession with power and control had catastrophic consequences, proving how dangerous extreme narcissism can be in leadership. Analyzing the motivations of narcissistic leaders. What drives a narcissistic leader? Psychologists point to three major factors. Deep-seated insecurity, the fragile ego. Despite their outward confidence, many narcissistic leaders battle deep personal insecurities. Their grandiosity and need for admiration often mask profound self-doubt. Examples: Hitler's rejection from art school and feelings of inadequacy. Napoleon's height insecurity, leading to his aggressive pursuit of dominance. Stalin's paranoia, rooted in childhood abuse and constant need for validation. To them, power is not just a desire, it's a necessity to shield their fragile self-image. The need for absolute control, a defense mechanism. Narcissistic leaders view control as the ultimate safeguard against vulnerability. They distrust others, create cults of personality, and often purge anyone perceived as a threat. Stalin's Great Purge, eliminating rivals and perceived enemies. Genghis Khan's brutal enforcement of loyalty through mass executions. Caesar's centralization of power and eventual assassination by the Senate. This obsession with control makes them dangerous because they will do anything to maintain power. Childhood trauma and environmental influences. Early life experiences shape the psychology of a leader. Many narcissistic leaders endured trauma, neglect, or hardships that fueled their thirst for power. Genghis Khan was abandoned as a child, shaping his ruthless survivalist mentality. Hitler's abusive father contributed to his deep-seated anger and resentment. Stalin's brutal upbringing fostered his paranoia and thirst for dominance. Their past don't excuse their actions, but they do help explain their motivations. The consequences of narcissistic leadership. Narcissistic leadership often leads to devastating consequences. While some leaders bring short-term success, their unchecked ego and thirst for power eventually cause destruction. Political and social instability. Unchecked power often leads to paranoia, purges, and suppression of dissent. Stalin's Great Purge led to millions of executions and imprisonments. Caesar's assassination plunged Rome into civil war. Hitler's totalitarianism led to World War II. Economic collapse and exploitation. Narcissistic leaders prioritize personal power over economic stability. Hitler's war economy collapsed after initial gains. Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward resulted in famine and millions of deaths. Napoleon's costly wars drained France's resources. Human rights violations and mass suffering. A lack of empathy often leads to atrocities and suffering. The Holocaust and ethnic cleansing under Hitler. The brutal execution of Mongol enemies under Genghis Khan. Forced labor camps under Stalin's reign. While narcissistic leaders often achieve short-term greatness, their long-term impact is usually devastating. Lessons learned from history. As we've seen, narcissistic leaders can be incredibly influential, but their leadership often leads to turmoil and destruction. So, what can history teach us about recognizing and mitigating the dangers of narcissistic leadership? Here are 5 key lessons that can help us better understand the dynamics of power, leadership, and society. 1. The danger of unchecked power. Why absolute power corrupts absolutely. One of the biggest dangers of narcissistic leadership is the tendency toward absolute control. The more power a leader accumulates, the less they tolerate dissent. This can lead to censorship, oppression, and authoritarian rule. Julius Caesar's accumulation of power as dictator for life led directly to his assassination, as senators feared he would end the Roman Republic. Stalin's paranoia led to the Great Purge, where millions were executed or sent to gulags for merely being suspected threats. Hitler eliminated political opposition and used propaganda to control public perception. Modern implications. When we see leaders attacking the press, disregarding democratic institutions, or silencing critics, history warns us to be cautious. A strong democracy requires checks and balances to prevent leaders from abusing power. Charisma is not always a sign of good leadership. Charisma is one of the most powerful tools in a leader's arsenal. A charismatic leader can inspire people, rally movements, and change history, but charisma alone does not make a good leader. Napoleon Bonaparte was a master orator and strategist, but his endless ambition led to France's downfall. Adolf Hitler's fiery speeches captivated millions, but his rhetoric led to World War II and genocide. Modern implications. Just because a leader speaks well, inspires crowds, or makes bold promises doesn't mean they have the people's best interests at heart. We must look beyond words and assess their actions, policies, and ethical standards. The role of the people. How societies enable narcissistic leaders. A leader cannot rise to power alone. Society plays a role in elevating and enabling them. Often, narcissistic leaders exploit fear, economic instability, and social unrest to gain control. Hitler's rise was fueled by the economic despair of the Weimar Republic and a population desperate for change. Julius Caesar capitalized on Rome's political corruption and public dissatisfaction to justify his rise to power. Genghis Khan used a fractured Mongolian society to unite tribes under his rule. Modern implications. When people are desperate for stability or change, they can be more willing to overlook red flags in a leader. It's important for societies to critically evaluate leaders, ask tough questions, and resist being swayed purely by emotion or rhetoric. The power of propaganda and misinformation. Narcissistic leaders often manipulate the truth to shape public perception. They use propaganda, distort facts, and create us versus them narratives to maintain power. Stalin rewrote history, erasing political enemies from photographs and controlling education to indoctrinate citizens. Hitler used mass propaganda, controlling the media and portraying himself as Germany's savior. Napoleon commissioned art and literature to glorify his image and suppress opposition. Modern implications. In the digital age, misinformation spreads faster than ever. Recognizing manipulation tactics, whether through state-controlled media, social media disinformation, or politically biased news, is crucial for maintaining a well-informed public. Ethical leadership is essential for a stable society. History shows that the best leaders are those who serve the people, not themselves. Ethical leadership is based on principles like humility, integrity, empathy, and accountability. George Washington could have become a lifelong ruler, but chose to step down after 2 terms, setting a democratic precedent. Nelson Mandela, despite suffering decades of imprisonment, led South Africa toward reconciliation rather than revenge. Franklin D. Roosevelt used his influence to guide the U.S. through economic depression and war while maintaining democratic institutions. Modern implications. We need leaders who prioritize long-term well-being over personal gain. It's up to societies to support ethical leadership and reject leaders who seek power for its own sake. So, what can we do to prevent history from repeating itself? Here are 3 key takeaways. Be skeptical of leaders who seek absolute power. No leader should be above scrutiny or accountability. Question charisma and look at actions, not just words. A compelling speech is not the same as ethical governance. Be informed and resist propaganda. Understanding history, thinking critically, and demanding transparency is essential. Even today, we see leaders with narcissistic tendencies. The question is, will we recognize the signs before it's too late? Let's discuss in the comments below. And if you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history and psychology.